The story I bring tonight is carved in shadow and fire, in the aching silence between rejection and destiny. This is no gentle tale, no sweet song of easy love. It is the story of bonds that bleed, of hearts that shatter, of souls that refuse to surrender even when torn apart by pride. In a world ruled by the moon, where every heartbeat is weighed by law and tradition, a girl stands at the edge of despair. She has always been the outsider, always been whispered about, always been watched with suspicion. Yet the same moon that cursed her blood may be the very force that demands she rise. Her path will twist through betrayal and revelation. The alpha who cast her aside will find his power crumbling, his pride turning to chains, his destiny tangled in a girl he swore to reject. But can a bond forged by the moon goddess truly be broken? Or does rejection only fan the fire into something more dangerous? What you are about to hear is not only romance, but war between heart and duty. Each choice cuts deeper than claws. Each kiss burns hotter than battle fire. This is a tale of broken vows, ancient secrets, and a love so sharp it could kill. If you've ever wondered what it feels like to be both chosen and cast away, to hold in your hands the power to heal and the power to destroy, you will find your reflection in her story, and when the moon rises, you will feel its pull as surely as she does. If you are ready to feel every heartbeat, every betrayal, every impossible kiss, hit subscribe and let the story begin. The courtyard shimmered like a blade under the silver weight of the full moon. Hundreds gathered, silent, breathless, the ancient stones reflecting pale light across faces filled with hunger and judgment. She stood at the center, trembling but unbowed, the scar on her wrist hidden beneath her sleeve. This was supposed to be the night of promise, of union, of recognition. Instead, her fate hung on the single voice of the alpha. His shadow stretched long across the courtyard, and when his eyes locked on hers, the world froze. In that frozen second, she dared to imagine hope, imagined his hand reaching out, imagined belonging. But hope is a cruel thing, more dangerous than knives. His voice struck the air with finality, heavy as an executioner's axe. "I reject you. You will never be my mate." The words cracked her open. Gasps rippled through the crowd like fire through dry grass. Some smirked, some pitied, some whispered unworthy. The weight of those stares pressed into her skin like 1,000 needles. She would not cry. She would not fall. Not here. But inside, something snapped. A thread of light torn from her chest, leaving fire and emptiness behind. Her lips parted. A breath caught between fury and despair. If he has cut the bond, why does it still burn? The question thundered in her skull, but no voice answered. Her pulse was a drum, each beat a blade. The scar beneath her sleeve pulsed faintly, as if mocking her. She turned from him, from the pack, from the moon itself. Every step away was agony, a tearing of flesh she could not see, a wound deeper than bone. Yet her spine stayed straight, her chin lifted, because if she broke now, they would feast on her weakness for years to come. Pride was all she had left. The courtyard swallowed her absence. The alpha did not call her back. The pack did not move. And high above, the moon burned colder, watching with eyes that never blinked. The forest swallowed her footsteps as she fled, branches tearing at her dress, roots clutching at her ankles. Night air seared her lungs with pine and damp earth, each breath sharper than the last. She stumbled until her back pressed against the rough bark of an ancient oak, and only then did the sob escape, raw and jagged. Alone, but not silent, the forest always listened. "I will not beg," she whispered into the dark, her voice trembling but defiant. The words cracked like brittle glass, fragile yet unyielding. Her hands shook, but her eyes burned with a spark she refused to let die. She pressed her palm against the old scar at her wrist, the one she never understood, and under the moon's glow it shimmered faintly, an ember beneath skin. The sound was not wind, yet leaves rustled in answer. A hum vibrated beneath her skin, too deep for ears, too ancient for language. It crawled through the marrow of her bones, whispering that she was not as abandoned as she believed. Pain coiled into fear, and fear coiled into questions she dared not voice. She closed her eyes, letting the forest silence surround her, until silence revealed itself to be something else. Breath, slow and measured. Not her own. Her skin prickled. She was being watched. The hair at her nape rose. Warning of presence unseen, but undeniable. The moonlight shifted. A shape emerged between trees, eyes glinting like molten amber. Neither wolf nor human. Something liminal. It did not move, only stared. And in that stare, her scar burned hotter, searing as if alive. She bit her lip, fighting the scream clawing to escape. "Who are you?" she whispered, voice barely more than breath. The figure did not answer. Only the forest answered, and the forest was not kind. The Alpha sat in the great hall, its silence heavier than war drums. He should have felt free. Rejection was supposed to sever, to cleanse. Yet his chest ached as though claws had raked him open, and his fists dripped blood from wounds carved by his own nails. Her scent lingered, soft as memory, sharp as poison. His beta lingered near the door, eyes careful, voice low. "Something's wrong," he said, as if naming the unease would bind it. "You cast her aside, yet you bleed as though you lost part of yourself." The words dug deeper than steel, but the Alpha's pride was a fortress built on denial. In the darkness of his chamber, sleep offered no mercy. Fire rose in his dreams, flames licking at his skin, and in the center she stood, her screams tearing the night. He reached for her, but she dissolved into smoke, leaving him gasping awake, sweat clinging to his skin. He stared at his hands, the hands that had pushed her away. Strength was supposed to make him untouchable, yet strength crumbled against a truth he refused to accept. "I do not need her. I will not," he told himself. But lies taste bitter when swallowed. His mother's words echoed from years past. Destiny bends for no man, not even an Alpha. He had laughed then, arrogant in his youth. Now the echo twisted into prophecy, heavy as chains. His pride, once crown and shield, pressed into him like a collar. He rose, restless, pacing the shadows. Somewhere in the forest, she still breathed. He felt it. The question gnawed at him. Was his pain punishment from the moon goddess, or was it a warning of what was yet to come? The forest gave no peace. She wandered, heart aching, until the attack came swift as storm. Wolves with foreign eyes, feral, bloodthirsty, burst from the underbrush. Teeth sank into her arm, claws raked across her ribs. She fought with desperate strength, but every strike was clumsy, every breath a ragged plea. The scar on her wrist flared with lunar fire, blinding one attacker long enough for her to break free. Power surged through her veins, wild, unfamiliar. But it was not enough. She stumbled back against roots that coiled like serpents, trapped as jaws snapped inches from her throat. And then the clearing shattered with a roar. The Alpha burst forth, fury in every motion, his claws rending flesh, his eyes burning brighter than flame. He cut through her attackers, leaving only silence and blood. She stared at him, trembling, unsure if he was savior or executioner. He reached for her. An instinct screamed to recoil. Yet when his hand caught hers, the world exploded in fire. Energy ripped through her, alive, searing, undeniable. The bond, broken, rejected, burned between them like a star. She gasped, torn between rage and longing, her eyes filled with tears that refused to fall. Why now? After everything? The question seared her throat, but she would not give him the satisfaction of hearing it. His gaze locked on hers, storm and sorrow colliding. From the shadows, another pair of eyes watched. The rival, lips curved in a smile too sharp to be kind. She had seen, and secrets seen can never be unseen. The healer's hut reeked of herbs and smoke, heavy enough to choke. The old woman's hands trembled as she wrapped bandages around torn flesh, but her eyes widened at the glowing scar. "Child," she breathed, reverent and afraid. "Do you know what you carry?" The protagonist shook her head, her voice raw. "All I carry is shame." But the healer's expression hardened, shaking her into silence. "No, you carry blood not seen for generations. Your mother's line was lunar, blessed and cursed, hunted until nothing remained. Or so they thought." The words fell like stones into a lake, rippling through everything she believed. Lunar blood, forgotten, whispered in legends. The healer leaned closer, lowering her voice to a prayer. Only the true mate of an Alpha can awaken that mark. Only together can it shine. Her breath caught, chest tightening. So all this pain, it was never weakness? It was power? The revelation clawed at her throat, tearing between rage and awe. If this was power, why had it brought nothing but ruin? Why had destiny made her a target? The Alpha stood silent in the corner, his jaw locked, his pride a battlefield. His eyes betrayed what his words would not. Fear, recognition, a bond he could no longer deny. Yet still he said nothing, for to admit truth was to surrender pride. Her gaze burned into him, daring him to speak, daring him to claim what he had destroyed. And in the silence between them, one truth rang clear. Power never goes unnoticed. If she carried lunar blood, both pack and enemy would come to claim it. The council hall was carved from stone older than memory, torches sputtering with smoke that clung to the rafters. Every elder sat stiff, eyes sharp, their weight pressing heavier than the walls themselves. The Alpha stood before them, shoulders squared, yet a storm brewed behind his gaze. They had summoned him not as leader, but as one who had erred. An elder with a voice like gravel spoke first. The pack requires certainty. An Alpha cannot falter, cannot hesitate. You rejected the girl. You must now take another. Murmurs rose in agreement, weaving a net that left no escape. They wanted order, even if it meant building it on broken flesh. The Alpha's jaw clenched. Images of her flashed against his will, her trembling defiance, the burn of her touch, the light in her scar. He ground his teeth, pride urging him to deny, to prove he was unshaken. But beneath the pride, another voice whispered, if destiny could not be broken, then what had he done? His mother, regal and merciless, stepped forward. Her hand brushed his arm, a caress colder than steel. Take the rival, she said, her voice honeyed poison. She will strengthen you. She will steady the pack. The other is weakness, danger. Her eyes glittered with secrets, and he wondered what game she played. Across the room, whispers turned to chains. His choice was shrinking, narrowed by politics, tradition, and fear. Yet the bond inside him roared louder, thrashing against denial. He felt it pull toward the forest, toward the girl who refused to vanish. And then, gasps broke the silence. At the hall's threshold she appeared, her scar burning bright, her chin lifted in defiance. The pack stirred, torn between awe and fear. She had walked into the lion's den carrying fire in her veins. The elders demanded proof. Words were not enough, nor were whispers of old bloodlines. Only ritual could decide. The trial of blood, ancient and merciless, was called. A circle was drawn beneath the moon, symbols carved in salt and ash, the air thick with the weight of history. She stood within it, trembling, yet unbroken. The Alpha's heart hammered as he watched. He wanted to step forward to shield her, but the trial demanded solitude. Pain would test her worth. Endurance would prove her claim. The crowd pressed in, breathless, waiting for spectacle, for either miracle or destruction. The knife glimmered in the elder's hand, cold against her palm. She bit back a gasp as the blade kissed skin, and her blood spilled onto stone. The ground drank it hungrily, and in that instant, the scar on her wrist ignited, casting light so pure it silenced the crowd. Her cry became a hymn, torn between agony and revelation. Her knees buckled, but she refused to fall. I will not break for them. I will not. Her thoughts burned louder than the pain, louder than the jeers. The scar's glow pulsed with the rhythm of her heartbeat, and voices, ancient, endless, echoed in her mind, calling her name. The pack gasped, half in reverence, half in terror. Some fell to their knees, others turned away, unwilling to face destiny's demand. But before the trial could complete, the air split with snarls. Shadows burst into the circle, attackers, intruders, enemies who had chosen this moment to strike. The ritual's power fractured, salt scattered, blood smeared, chaos erupted. The trial would not finish, leaving questions burning hotter than answers. And at the center, her scar still blazed like a star refusing to die. The night turned red with blood. Wolves poured into the courtyard, their eyes burning with foreign fire. Claws met flesh, teeth tore cries from throats, and the pack's unity crumbled under the sudden onslaught. Screams collided with the clash of steel, and the sacred circle was shattered beyond repair. She fought, though her body still trembled from the trial. Each breath was a war, each strike pulled from desperation. The scar blazed, sending pulses of light that staggered her enemies, but it drained her, each flare stealing strength. She stumbled, yet refused to yield. The Alpha tore through the invaders, his rage unchained. Every strike was fire, every roar a storm. Yet even in battle, he felt her presence amplify his power. When she bled, his fury grew. When she stood, barely breathing, his strength doubled. Together they were chaos and salvation, though neither admitted it aloud. In one desperate surge, their hands touched. Fire erupted outward, a wave of lunar energy that blasted enemies back. The courtyard fell silent for a breath, every eye on them, fear and awe mingling. Even the moon seemed to pause, as if holding its breath, but victory was hollow. In the shadows, the rival slipped away, clutching an ancient artifact stolen from the ritual's altar. Her smile was sharp, her escape unseen by most, but not by the protagonist, whose scar burned hotter as she watched her vanish. The battle ended, the pack shaken but alive. Yet the enemy had left with more than blood. They had stolen power, and power stolen is always weaponized. Morning brought no peace. Smoke rose from the courtyard, mingling with the scent of blood and ash. The Alpha stood among the wounded, his hands clenched, his pride unraveling. He had failed to protect his people, failed to protect her, and worse, his rival now carried something sacred, something dangerous. The protagonist paced the healer's hut, fury twisting her wounds. "If you won't chase her, I will." Her whisper burned hotter than fever. The healer begged her to rest, but rest was impossible. The scar throbbed with urgency, pulling her toward the rival's path like a beacon. The Alpha confronted her, words clashing like steel. "You will not leave. It's too dangerous." She met his gaze with fire. "Too dangerous for me, or for your pride?" Silence answered, heavier than any blow. His fear was not only for her, it was for what her power revealed about him. Unable to wait, she slipped into the forest under the veil of night. Every step was pain, but determination burned brighter. Yet her trail was not hers alone. Eyes watched, whispers followed. Enemies moved faster than she expected, and by the time the Alpha sensed her absence, she had already fallen into their hands. Chains bit into her wrists, heavy, cold. She was dragged into enemy territory, her scar burning brighter as though mocking her capture. The rival stood waiting, the stolen artifact glowing faintly in her grip, and in that cruel smile, the truth gleamed. This was never only about her rejection. It was about power, about thrones, about who would control the moon's blessing. The cell smelled of iron and damp earth, walls slick with moss, air thick with hopelessness. She sat shackled, scar burning faintly beneath the chains. The rival paced before her, sharp eyes glittering with triumph. "You should thank me," she sneered. "If the Alpha won't use your gift, I will." Her voice shook, but defiance held. "You cannot control what was never yours." The rival only laughed, raising the artifact so it caught the moonlight filtering through cracks. Its glow answered her scar, threads of power straining between them. Her strength was no longer hers alone. It was being stolen, siphoned. In the pack's stronghold, the Alpha staggered as though struck. Pain surged through him, not his own but hers, carried by the bond he had tried to deny. His beta frowned. "She is far, too far." The Alpha's silence was answer enough. He knew where she was, even if he would not admit how. In the cell, she wrestled with fear, her mind whispering traitorous thoughts. If he left me once, why would he come now? Yet even as despair crept in, fire fought back. "I will not die here. I am not his weakness. I am my own strength." Her voice was low, but her resolve rang true. The rival leaned close, her smile cruel. "You think destiny chose you? No. Destiny made a mistake, and I will correct it." Her fingers brushed the artifact, beginning a ritual that made the walls tremble, stones bleeding with light. The protagonist clenched her fists, nails digging into flesh, her scar blazing so bright it burned through the chains. And in that moment, she felt it. The Alpha's mind brushing hers, desperate, furious, alive. The Alpha rode into enemy territory like a storm-given flesh, his warriors at his back, but his fury burning brighter than any weapon. Forest bent before his passage, branches breaking beneath relentless speed. The bond pulled him, guiding like a compass forged of pain and need, dragging him toward the girl he had cast aside yet could not forget. Every step closer made his chest ache, her suffering echoing through him. His beta rode at his side, his face tight, eyes shadowed with secrets. "This is madness," he muttered, though his hands clenched weapons ready for blood. To risk everything for her. The Alpha silenced him with a glare, but doubt festered. Still, the bond refused to quiet, beating louder with each mile, drowning reason in its tide. In the dungeon, the protagonist lifted her head as the air changed. Her chains rattled when she sat straighter, scar blazing with sudden light. "He is coming," the thought burst unbidden, trembling with both rage and relief. She wanted to curse him for leaving, wanted to believe she no longer needed him. But her heart betrayed her with its wild, unstoppable pounding. The walls shook when the pack broke through. Metal shrieked, stones cracked, and the Alpha entered the chamber like judgment itself. His gaze locked on hers, pain and fire tangled together, and for one breath, the world ceased. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to weep, but her lips only shaped the words, "You came." He broke the chains with his bare hands, the bond surging so fierce it nearly blinded them both. Power flooded the room, her scar casting light across walls slick with shadow. The rival hissed from the doorway, rage twisting her features, the artifact clutched tight. "You cannot save her. She is mine now." The Alpha drew her close, his hand steady, though his soul trembled. For the first time, pride bent beneath love. "No," he growled, his voice a vow to her and to the moon above. "She is mine." Freedom came with blood. They fought their way out of the stronghold, every corridor painted red, every step a battle. The Alpha shielded her, but she refused to be carried. Her fists struck, her voice cried defiance, her scar burned with unyielding fire. Together they carved a path through chaos, every heartbeat binding them tighter. But shadows lingered even in triumph. The beta moved slower, his gaze heavy when it landed on her. She felt it. Something unsaid, something bitter. In a quiet moment, as torches sputtered, he caught her wrist. "Do you think he came for you?" He came for the bond, not the girl. His voice dripped with envy, and for the first time, she saw him not as ally, but as rival. The Alpha turned, sensing tension, but before words could form, the rival's wolves struck again. Blades flashed, cries rang, and in the chaos, the beta hesitated. His blade, meant to defend, turned too slow, his eyes fixed on her. For one heartbeat, he let weakness betray them. She gasped as claws tore her side, blood spilling hot. The Alpha roared, shoving the beta aside, rage boiling. "You dare!" His fury was thunder, his claws a storm, but the beta only lowered his gaze, shame curdling into silence. The truth was plain. His love had twisted into jealousy, and jealousy had left her vulnerable. Her knees buckled, the world blurring. Pain blurred with fury, yet she forced herself upright. "I will not fall, not here." Her scar burned brighter than flame, forcing the attackers back for a breath. The Alpha caught her, steadying her trembling frame, but the rival's laughter cut through the chaos. She stood on the cliff above, the artifact glowing with stolen power. "Let them fight themselves," she mocked, "and the moon will be mine." The rival's lair was a temple long abandoned, its stones cracked but its power intact. Symbols etched in silver gleamed in the moonlight, and the artifact pulsed with stolen energy. At its center, she prepared the ritual, her voice weaving words older than language. The protagonist was dragged into the circle, her wrists bound once more, her scar blazing against its will. The Alpha fought to reach her, but the temple itself resisted, walls closing, shadows striking. Every step was agony, every breath a war, yet his eyes never left hers, and the bond screamed louder than stone, pulling him forward. His fury alone kept him from breaking. The rival lifted the artifact, pointing it toward the girl. "With her blood, I claim the moon. With her bond, I claim the Alpha." Power swirled, lightning tearing the sky open. The the ground trembling as destiny bent beneath ambition. The pack outside howled, powerless to enter. The protagonist struggled, her thoughts a storm. If this is the end, let me end it on my terms. Her lips curled into a bitter smile, defiance even in despair. She looked to the Alpha and whispered, "You do not need to save me, but I will not let her own me." The Alpha slammed against the barrier, his voice raw. "You are mine." For the first time, it was not pride, not command, but plea. The words broke something in him, pride crumbling into surrender. He bent, not as Alpha, but as man, and the bond answered. The barrier shattered, lunar fire surging from her scar into his chest. Together, they were no longer two souls, but one storm. The ritual backfired, the rival screaming as light burned through her stolen power. The temple erupted, stones collapsing, light exploding across the night. The rival shrieked, wielding the artifact with desperate strength, her body cracking with power too vast to contain. Wolves clashed outside, pack against pack, cries filling the air with the sound of apocalypse. The Alpha and the protagonist stood side by side, power thrumming between them. He bared his claws, she raised her scar, and together they unleashed fury. Every strike echoed destiny, every step a vow. He fought with steel, she with fire, and together they carved through shadow. The rival lunged, the artifact blazing. It struck the Alpha's chest, piercing deep, and he fell with a cry that split the world. The protagonist screamed, her voice tearing sky and stone alike. Pain turned to fire, fire to power, power to fury. She rose above her fear, above her wounds, and her scar erupted into a light that consumed the rival whole. The artifact shattered, shards scattering like stars. Silence followed, broken only by the protagonist's sob as she fell to her knees beside him. Blood stained his lips, his breath shallow. He touched her cheek, his pride gone, his heart bare. "Forgive me," he whispered. Her tears fell hot onto his skin. "Do not leave me. Not now. Not after everything." Her voice cracked, but the bond pulsed strong. Light flowed from her scar into his wound, sealing flesh with lunar fire. His breath steadied, his eyes opening to her face. Alive, the pack entered, bowing their heads in awe. They had seen the truth. Destiny had chosen, and destiny had prevailed. The girl once rejected now stood as Luna, no longer hidden, no longer denied. Dawn painted the ruins in gold, smoke curling into soft sky. The pack gathered in silence, eyes lowered not in judgment, but in reverence. The Alpha stood beside her, his hand entwined with hers, their bond radiant, undeniable. Where once there was rejection, now there was vow. Before the council, he knelt, not as Alpha, but as man. "I was blind," he said, his voice carrying, "blind with pride, but the moon does not err. She is my mate, my strength, my Luna." Gasps broke, then silence, then a chorus of howls that shook the heavens. The beta stepped forward, shame carved into his features. He bowed low, voice raw. "Forgive me." She met his gaze, her eyes sharp but soft. "You are forgiven," she said, though her heart whispered caution. Forgiveness was not forgetting, and some scars never faded. Later, beneath the quiet moon, she stood alone, the Alpha at her side, her eyes lifted skyward, scar glowing faintly. "I thought rejection broke me," she whispered, "but it forged me instead." He brushed his hand against hers, pride replaced with reverence. "You were never mine to reject. You were always mine to find." Their lips met, not as apology, but as beginning. The bond flared, bright as the moon itself, sealing what destiny had written. For the first time, she believed not in curse, not in weakness, but in her own strength, her own power, her own place. And as the dawn broke fully, the pack howled their unity, the girl once forgotten now their guiding star. The moon watched, silent and eternal, but if one listened closely, its light carried a whisper. This is only the beginning.